Hey guys, Andrew here with another quick clip, and in this quick clip I'm going to address probably the most requested topic, which is all about painting mediums. In fact, this is going to be a little bit broad, so I'm going to have to break it into two parts, and we won't even cover all there is to be covered. So what I'm going to do is just give you a start into unpacking the complexity of the mediums that I'm using. Now, I should mention from the outset that this is not an endorsed video or a sponsored video in any way. I don't represent any company. I'm just simply showing you what I use and what has gotten really good results for me as a professional artist. Let's get into it. Now, some of you might be wondering, what are mediums? Well, mediums are simply substances that we add to our oil paint to change the oil paint's property in some way, either by extending or reducing drying time, to changing the properties with layering colors on top of one another, to even getting different effects with either texture or very fine detail. So let's have a chat about some of these different mediums that I'm using and their different properties. Alright guys, let's kick things off with Winsor & Newton Liquin Original and Winsor & Newton Liquin Impasto. These are alkyd resins, which basically means they're thermoplastic polyester resins made by heating polyhydric alcohols with polybasic acids, and they're anhydrides. Did you understand that? No, neither did I. All we need to know basically is that this stuff is going to effectively plasticize our paint, making it permanently flexible, and meaning that we're able to apply layer upon layer upon layer. Now, many artists use this stuff because it's incredibly convenient, because their paintings will go dry overnight. In fact, it can dry incredibly quickly. Now, that means that we're able to continually add to our paintings, and we don't have to wait days and days and days for these things to dry. Now, that can either be a really good thing for your process and your artistic practice, or it might be a hindrance in some way. Now, with some of the bigger paintings, I found that Winsor & Newton Liquin Original dried a little bit too fast, and I needed something that would give me a little bit more time to work and apply some blending techniques. So this stuff has got a really nice thickness to it. It's almost a little bit of a gel, but when we mix it into our paint, it's going to improve the flow and consistency of our colors, and as I said, it's going to dry incredibly quickly. Now, this stuff as well, Liquin Impasto, is also going to dry very, very quickly. And that drying occurs because the solvent base in here evaporates out, leaving that permanently flexible, almost plastic-like layer. Now, I've gotten really incredible, predictable results from using this medium. It's a great place to start, but just a word of caution. The solvent content that's in there means that it is going to dry quickly, but it's also going to be a little bit on the nose. So make sure that if you're using this, you use it in a well-ventilated space. Now let's have a quick chat about Liquin Impasto. Now, as I mentioned, this has got the same constituents as Liquin Original, it's just the ratios are a little bit different. This is going to come out about the consistency of toothpaste, and it's great for retaining brush marks and creating a little bit of texture. As the name suggests, impasto texture. So when I layer this over my Liquin Original layer, and normally I would start off my blocking and modeling layers with this, and then work up final thick detail with this stuff, what's going to happen is it's going to retain those brush marks and keep some really nice thick texture in there. It's slightly thixotropic, but that means that the more I work it with the paint, it kind of thins out a little bit, but the minute I stop working it, it instantly sets up, retaining all of that texture. Also, this stuff is really great for extending color. So the minute I stop working that surface is when it's going to set up, retaining all of these ridge lines, brush marks, and texture. It's pretty good stuff, nice and convenient, and again, it's going to dry incredibly quickly. Now, in the scheme of things, Liquin Original and Liquin Impasto, along with other alkyd resins, are relatively recent technologies when it comes to the history of painting and the history of making mediums. You would have heard of the law of working fat on lean. That law kind of goes out the window when we're dealing with a product like this. As long as every bit of the paint that I'm mixing as I build up my layers has got a little bit of this Liquin Original in it, then we're going to get some really good adhesion, and we're going to avoid cracking and crazing as we talked about earlier. So just as long as I keep a little bit of that in there, I know that I'm going to have a stable and predictable result. Now, there is some talk online about this stuff going yellow. I have been painting with it for the last 10 years, and I haven't noticed any evidence of that at all. The only time where it might go yellow is if we applied this as a glaze directly over our painted surface without any paint in there at all, or maybe just a very thin, minuscule amount of paint mixed in with the Liquin original. I wouldn't recommend it for glazing. As long as we're mixing this stuff with a ratio of about 1 to 2 parts paint for 1 part medium, we should be all right and not get any of that yellowing that you hear about online. But on that note, let me know in the comments section below if you guys have been using this as well, and I'd love to hear about your experience with using some of this Liquin original. All right guys, now let's have a quick chat about a different family of mediums altogether. Recently I've been playing with these mediums made by Langridge Handmade Oil Colors based in Melbourne, and I've been really enjoying the results so far. What do we have here? We've got low toxic underpainting medium, oleo gel, and impasto medium, and I use these for what's called direct painting. Now, direct painting is where you manipulate layers of wet paint one in with the other to get some sort of wet and wet or alla prima type look. This is great because they are slow drying, which means we have some time for some blending techniques and to just be able to manipulate these layers. You would have noticed that I've used this medium here, oleo gel, in a lot of my recent episodes of The Great Art Adventure, but also in my DVD tutorials that I've recently released. Now let us begin with low toxic underpainting medium. I use this to begin my paintings, and I use this for the block-in layers, where I'm brushing across broad areas of color and just mapping out the whole composition before I begin painting. This stuff is incredibly fluid. It contains stand oil and low toxic solvent, so it's incredibly thin, but this is where we start. So this would be what they call lean medium, and we're going to work up over the surface of this dried medium layer with our more fatty mediums. So as you can see here, it's incredibly runny, and I will use this to basically block in those layers, and it will make an incredibly fluid paint layer for me to then go back and layer over the top. This will dry within about 24 hours to form a surface dry. We're not going to build up any thickness with this medium at all. Now, in my most recent portrait tutorial of the Stockman, I used this medium to form a tonal block-in, otherwise known as a grisaille. Now, that tonal approach, that was all mapped out in one sitting using low toxic underpainting medium, and then I layered back over the top of that once this was dry in 24 hours. Now let's have a quick chat about Langridge Oleo Gel. I've been using this medium a heck of a lot, and you would have seen me use this in episodes of The Great Art Adventure and also some of my most recent DVD tutorials on painting portraits and painting the Southwest seascape. Now, this is a great gelled oil medium. It's thixotropic. Let's just have a quick look here and talk a little bit about its properties. Now, it's going to have this really nice waxy, pasty consistency, which will give you the impression that it's going to lead to all sorts of impasto texture. However, the more we work this stuff, the thinner it gets, and so it's really great for extending our oil colors. And I even find that this is really closely related to the way Liquin Original handles in terms of increasing the flow and bettering the consistency of the paint. We must use this medium really thin though, and build up no more than 1 millimeter of thickness. So it's a little bit misleading when you see how thick it comes out of the tin, that you might be thinking, oh great, this is going to lead to all sorts of really heavy textured layers. Not the case. So if we're using this as thin layers, what we can do is build up our layers from there and then finally get into some more impasto texture with a different product that I'm about to show you. So what I'm using this medium for though is what might be called modeling, which is the more subtle or more intricate manipulating of the paint layer on top of the block-in layer. This is great for rounding out some of my shapes and forms and increasing the complexity of the image somewhat, but it's giving me really great control, handling, and flow. Now, the drying time for this medium is going to be about 4 to 5 days to set up a surface or film dry, and for a complete dry, it's going to take a little bit longer, maybe a couple of weeks. That said, when it comes to things like varnishing, I'm going to make a separate quick clip all about that, about how to finalize and put a final layer or a final coat on your paintings. But we're going to want to wait up to about 6 months to a year before we varnish a painting that has been painted using this stuff. Now, you would have seen from a recent episode of The Great Art Adventure, episode 5 on painting the Stockman, that I've used oleo gel to oil in or provide a bit of a glaze. It's not designed for that, so I should just mention here that I got a little bit carried away with this stuff and used it to create a bit of a glazed layer to just improve the consistency of the surface of the painting so I could gauge my tones a little bit better. Not really designed for that, because what can happen when this is not mixed with paint is it can tend to go a little bit yellow. It's generally a non-yellowing oil, which means that when we mix it with our color, it's going to be very stable indeed, and it's going to really preserve all of the colors that we're mixing. So it's great when mixed with paint, but it's not designed to be a glaze as I showed you there. So don't do that. Bad Andrew. So we've talked about our low toxic underpainting medium, and we've talked about the oleo gel, and you guys have seen some of the properties of how those handle. Now let's talk about impasto medium, the final in this family of what I would call direct painting mediums. Now, impasto medium comes in these really nifty caulking tubes. It also comes in a tube like a paint tube that you can squeeze out. And this stuff is great because this is going to really retain all of the texture and all of the brushwork for our paintings. Now, as you can see here, it comes out extremely thick. And when we work this into our surface, it's basically going to allow us to have a stable, thick layer that's going to retain all of that brushwork. Now, I'm going to use this directly over the oleo gel. This is following still with the fat on lean principle. And what's allowing this to have a little bit more body and texture is that castor wax base. So it's got castor wax in there, fumed silica, safflower oil, and some cobalt dryers as well. It's a really great medium, really stable, and I'm really enjoying the results that I'm getting out of this so far. Now that I've shown you a little bit about how the impasto handles, why don't we take a closer look at how this medium's made? And I've made a video especially for you subscribers through my website. And if you want to join in and check out this latest video, it's very simple and it's free. All you got to do is go to www.andrewtischler.com/subscribe, and you'll subscribe to my bonus content and giveaways. So I'll see you over there, guys, with a special video all about Langridge impasto medium and how this stuff is made. Well, there you go, guys. What have we talked about here in this quick clip? I first showed you some of the materials that I was using when I first started painting, and these have actually got me through the last 10 years of being a professional artist. Winsor Newton Liquin Original and Winsor Newton Liquin Impasto. Great alkyd resins for a really convenient approach to oil painting. Will dry incredibly quickly. Again, word of caution, they're going to be a little bit on the nose, so make sure you're using this product with plenty of ventilation. And we've also talked about some of Langridge handmade oil colors painting mediums. These are fantastic mediums, and I've been really enjoying the results I'm getting from them so far. Now, again, be sure that you're paying attention to the fat on lean principle and you're layering these in accordance to that fat on lean. We're going to start off lean and we're going to work our way up to some fattier mediums. Now, that said, guys, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below, and please stay tuned because part 2 is going to be on the way very soon. And in that quick clip, we're going to be talking a little bit more about some Langridge handmade oil colors, but a different approach to painting, which is called the indirect painting method. I think you're really going to enjoy that quick clip as well. As always, if you like what you saw here, hit that like button. If you want to come back for more, make sure you're subscribed, and you can also hit me up on Instagram and Facebook, but make sure you're also subscribed through www.andrewtischler.com for bonus content and giveaways. We'll see you again next time.